In the 21st century, modern combat has fundamentally outgrown the two-dimensional physical Earth that it has fought on. For centuries, national security relied on a simple geometric premise, a physical barrier separating sovereign territory from external threats. Defense meant holding a line drawn in the dirt. The mass proliferation of unmanned aerial vehicles bypasses that geometry entirely. A wall on the ground cannot stop an airborne munition. Planners now calculate defense through volumetric kill zones. Instead of static lines on a map, modern threats generate expanding, overlapping spheres of airspace denial. Evaluating a nation's geographic vulnerability today requires looking up, mapping the sky rather than the ground. To examine the scale of this shift, we can look to the active front in Ukraine, a vast continental theater providing the primary dataset for modern drone warfare.
We can then compare that data to a radically different environment, the heavily populated, geographically constrained borders of Israel. Despite massive differences in terrain and conflict, analysts mapping both theaters identified the exact same standardized threat matrix. Notice the shared visual language. You see concentric radii projecting outward from the front line, categorizing danger by strict distance. The drone hardware imposes universal range categories, regardless of where it flies. What determines whether a specific drone is a localized nuisance or a national threat is entirely dependent on a country's geographic strategic depth. This data table, located at the bottom of the Israeli threat map, establishes the baseline categories for these strike capabilities. The first row defines the tactical level, covering the 0 to 30-kilometer range directly along the border. This inner band is entirely saturated by cheap, highly agile first-person view drones and short-range munitions. These weapons target immediate forward positions and armor. They operate as an extension of the infantry's line of sight, striking just over the next ridge. Looking at the Ukrainian data, we see the exact same zone, though innovations like fiber optic tethers and sea-launched platforms are stretching this specific tactical band out to 50 kilometers. While highly lethal to the soldiers inside it, this tactical tier functions primarily as a localized problem for frontline infantry. Moving one step further out, we reach the second echelon of the matrix, the operative level. The hardware shifts here. To achieve ranges out to 200 kilometers, operators switch to fixed-wing designs and heavier loitering munitions built for sustained flight times rather than quick maneuvers. The intent is to bypass the immediate trench networks entirely to strike the critical infrastructure, logistics hubs, and staging areas that keep the front line supplied. Applied to the Israeli map, this 30 to 200 kilometer operative radius blankets nearly the entire central landmass of the state. On the Ukrainian map, this exact same range is classified merely as the first echelon of mid-range strikes. The operative tier turns the immediate interior of a country into an active combat zone, eliminating the concept of a safe rearguard. Finally, we reach the most expansive echelon, the strategic level, covering anything beyond 200 kilometers. At this range, the target is the state itself. Strikes aim to cripple national-level power grids, central command structures, and deep military reserves. Executing these deep strikes require heavy, high-endurance UAVs, capable of navigating hundreds of kilometers of hostile airspace. On the Ukrainian chart, this immense distance is categorized as a second echelon strike zone, reaching deep into the theater's interior. The strategic tier is not designed to win localized battlefield victories. It is a macro-level threat engineered to cause systemic collapse. While the ranges on these two threat tables are identical, evaluating them in isolation hides a crucial geometric reality. Look closely at the physical scale of the Ukrainian theater map. Down in the corner, we have a fixed 100-kilometer scale marker. To understand the true threat disparity, we have to visually normalize the Israeli map using that exact same 100-kilometer baseline. Placed side by side at proper scale, Israel's entire sovereign territory fits comfortably inside just the first two threat bands of the Ukrainian front. In Ukraine, a drone flying 300 kilometers penetrates the second echelon of logistics, but the immense physical landmass of the country absorbs the blow. In a geographically constrained theater like Israel, that exact same 300-kilometer operative flight becomes a strategic, whole-nation threat. Drone technology does not scale down to match local geography. A 200-kilometer flight path is an absolute physical constant. Because of this, the rapidly expanding ranges of modern UAVs have stripped away the value of traditional border defense for small to medium nations. An incoming loitering munition moves cleanly through the airspace, completely ignoring the lines drawn on the ground below. The only viable defense against these volumetric kill zones is comprehensive multi-layered airspace denial. Strategic depth is no longer measured by how many miles of land sit behind a fence. It is measured by the density of the airspace above your head.